Hello everyone and welcome back to my opinion. And India have won this game by 62 runs and take a 1-0 lead in the series. So, regarding the starting 11s of both teams, I think both teams were missing are missing players for this series, but I actually think for India it isn't such a bad thing because uh, I think in the games leading up to the T20 World Cup as well as the IPL as well, I think that it would be about getting the probables to make that T20 World Cup squad, kind of giving them sufficient game time, and so especially missing players and missing key players like Rahul, Virat Kohli, Rishabh Pant, etc. Players who will be in the team anyway. I think that it reduced a selection headache where you have these sets of kind of the set of players that they have now for 3 games to see how they'll go. And I think if you look at players like Sanju Samson, Deepak Hooda, yes, good players, but would they have got an opportunity if more players were available for the series? I'm not sure. So I actually think that it gives less of a selection headache to really focus on seeing what these players do in these 3 games. And if you look at the 11 that they fielded for this game, quite a strong one. So I certainly don't think it impacted things too much. And yeah, that's what I think about India really having a reduced selection headache for this series. And for Sri Lanka, though, I actually think it's the opposite way around because it's quite a young side with some experienced players in the fray. And I think that certainly they would have wanted all their key players like a Hasaranga, etc., to be available because, yeah, as I said, they are still quite a young side. And I think that they would really want the players who stand up for them on a regular basis to be available, especially considering the quality of the opposition that they're playing, even though they don't really have their first team available, let's say. But they really had to make do with what they had for this game, and they're going to have to do that in the series. And when I talk about the Sri Lankan batting innings, I'll actually get to I'll give my views on what I think about kind of their current situation in terms of how their squad looks like, and also why I think they were in a bit of a disadvantage coming into this game, and certainly how the second innings played out. So Darshan Shanaka won the toss and chose to field first, and the Indian openers Rohit Sharma and Ishan Kishan walked out to bat. And the first 2 overs of the game bowled by Dushmanta Chamira and Lahiru Kumara were quite disciplined. There's only one bad ball pretty much where Kumara drifted onto the pads and was hit for 4 by Rohit Sharma. But apart from that, 11 runs on the first 2 overs, and Sri Lanka kind of set a good tone in the first 2 overs as to how disciplined they would have wanted to be. And I don't know why the captain Dasun Chanaka did this. Now I'll get to why I think so shortly after this, but I think that especially with Chamira is not the greatest death bowler. We've seen that especially in the T20 World Cup where him and Kumara went for runs at the death, and I think that because of that, especially with how well he was bowling in the first over of this kind of his opening spell, it was quite confusing to see that he was taken off in the third over and Chamika Karnaratne was brought on. And that over pretty much set India and Ishan Kishan on their way because 15 runs were yielded in that over with 3 boundaries being scored by Ishan Kishan. And yeah, 15 runs on that over, it pretty much set things off for India after 2 disciplined overs from Sri Lanka. And what I think, the reason why I think this may be is because if you look at, as I said, their main 2 seamers, Dushmanta Chamira and Lahiru Kumara, they, despite whatever good they offer, the good that they offer, kind of a bowling kind of first up, I would say, and especially in the T20 World Cup, we saw where quite a few times in most of the games, Sri Lanka really did well in the first 10 overs and then just lost it from there in the last 10. And so it's the fact that your 2 most prominent bowlers, they aren't the greatest of death bowlers, yet you have to rely on them to bowl at the death because you look at the others, especially in this bowling attack, the 4 seamers were Chamira, Kumara, Karnaratne and Darshan Shanaka. So you've got only 2 of those bowlers are pure bowlers, and that's why, because of the nature of the other 2 bowlers, you wouldn't really want them bowling at the death either. And so despite acknowledging the weaknesses that your two lead seamers have, you kind of have no choice but to bowl them at the death. Now, I think Shamira could have bowled one more because he only bowled one over at the start. And I think that, yeah, consecutive setting three good overs, I think would have, again, just extended that kind of good momentum that they had very early on in the game. But yeah, I really think he could have bowled one more in that spell. But I also think that in the end, we've also seen that Chamira, Kumara, and Karunaratne have gone in excess of 10 runs per over. So clearly, the fact that they don't bowl well at the death showed. And I think that despite the fact that that is the case, they probably didn't have other options to trust at the death. So it's kind of a catch-22 where you acknowledge the weakness that a bowler has, but you have no choice but to try and bowl them at the death because you don't really have anyone else. So the opening partnership was quite a big one, 111. The dynamic of the partnership being Rohit Sharma was played second fiddle pretty much the entire partnership. And I think all the three batsmen who faced a decent amount of deliveries in the Indian innings, they took their time for the first few deliveries and then they kind of really were scoring at quite good strike rates. Rohit Sharma 44 of 32 and got out when the partnership had yielded 111 runs. And it was on the fifth ball of the 11th over when Lahiru Kumara kind of he got Rohit Sharma got out to him bowled. And about this wicket, we saw quite a bit of this in the second innings as well, where the pitch also deteriorated quite a bit as well. But that particular end, the Ekana University end, I think that the ball kept quite low, and I think that it seemed like a slower ball from Lahiru Kumara, and the ball bounced, or a slower ball from Lahiru Kumara, and the ball bounced quite low. So that's the reason why I kind of went through the gate and Rohit Sharma got bowled in the end. And yeah, a great opening stand and gave a really good foundation for India. And by then the run rate was also quite good as well, because after that third over, India had got the momentum. And Sri Lanka found it quite difficult to contain the runs in that partnership. And they found it difficult, especially because of the main aggressor really in Ishan Kishan, 89 or 56 all in all. When he got out on 155. Now, I'm going to talk about his innings now before I get to his dismissal. Of course, a great innings from him in this game, 89 or 56. And what I enjoyed about this was that, yes, he still did play some aggressive shots, but there was an air of responsibility about it. And I really think he reaffirmed what we know he can do. And I still think this was a great innings, but I think that you could say there's a conversation where you may say after the West Indies series where he didn't have great, or rather he was bogged down, where there'd be more of a confidence boost in this one. But for me, I don't think you can really say that. Now, it's because I don't actually think, yes, of course, he would have wanted to kind of get runs in a fluid manner, so you could say that. But as far as the intricacies of that series in this game, I don't even think it's a form thing or a confidence thing or anything, because if you just look at Ishan Kishan's game, you'll get two sides to it. And what I'm saying is this, right? I've said quite a few times before when covering the West Indies series is that I think the reason why Ishan Kishan struggled, and the reason why I'm not surprised he did, was because the pitches had something for the bowlers, and the bowling was top quality, especially in the first 10 overs. And or at least to Ishan Kishan, the bowling was pretty much always good. And I think that, because of that, of course he was going to struggle, considering if you look at what he does. He tries to go slam bang from the get-go. And I think that part of that, he does rely on a bit of breathing space of the pitch, not really offering as much for the bowlers, and the bowling not being that good. And you saw that in this game where certainly the deterioration hadn't really shown really at all, apart from that one ball where Kumara got Rohit Sharma out. The deterioration hadn't really shown at all. In fact, it was fairly intact in the first innings. So you could say there weren't really any demons in the pitch at that point in time. And also the bowling wasn't that great. So two situations that worked in favour for Ishan Kishan. And therefore, he does something which we all know he can do. But I think that there is a hurdle which, of course, he will know he has to get over as well, where it's a fact that I'm only going to talk about the top order batsmen in the West Indies series, because as I said before, the middle order batsmen really had a great time, because by the time they walked in and were hitting, had to bat, the bowling in the last 6 overs especially was terrible from the West Indies. So I think that you can't really equate those two things. But I'm saying that as far as even the top order batsmen around him, I think that they all, I think really the innings, that 17 of 13 from Virat Kohli, even though it was only 17, I think that he didn't put a foot wrong. And I think when Ishan Kishan was probably the most bogged down in that first game compared to all the other games, I think that Virat Kohli really rotated the strike off the spin, and I think only hit one boundary straight down the ground of Akil Hussain, yet he was on 17 of 12 before he got out. So I've said this before, I think it's unfair to have expected kind of a pocket rocket thing from Ishan Kishan in the situation of that series. Again, any batsman would have struggled when the bowling was good, and especially with the pitch conditions where there was quite a bit of swing early on, and there was purchase for the spinners throughout the 20 overs. So I think it would be unfair to expect the kind of impact that we've seen Ishan Kishan play, kind of have in kind of playing these really great T20 innings that he plays. It would have been unfair to expect that kind of innings here, and I never really expected that at all. I just kind of thought that a relatively kind of, even if you look at the, for example, Virat Kohli played 52 of 41. Yes, you could say Ishan Kishan wouldn't like to play that way, but I actually think that certainly maintaining a decent strike rate, maintaining a decent strike rate where you don't really have to go slam bang all the time, I think that was going to be something, and that is something that Ishan Kishan would want to cultivate. So I know, yes, this innings was good, but it's really something that I don't really think you can put this game and that series hand in hand, because for me, it's not even a form thing or anything. With Ishan Kishan, you get the good, which is when the pitch conditions aren't really, they're not as bowling friendly, and when the bowling isn't great, it's the optimal time for him to really set the tone at the top and play these kind of innings. But something which, of course, even he will know he's going to have to work on is the case where you look at the fact that, of course, you don't have to kind of have these pocket rocket impact in this in the situations like the West Indies series. I think it's a very unfair expectation, but certainly maintaining a decent strike rate where you can work the ball around, rotate the strike, and then you can capitalize in the way that you'd want to. So I think that certainly just a relative expectation based on how difficult the conditions are. Certainly, of course, you can't. Even someone like a Johnny Bairstow, for example, with a ball swing around and all that stuff. Yes, if he wouldn't have been able to do, he wouldn't have been able to just attack the bowling all out. And I think there's certainly quite a bit of responsibility when Johnny Bairstow bats, and that's the reason why he's able to really get good scores and be quite a lot of the time. So I think Ishan Kishan's going to have to do that kind of thing where just, I've referred to him before that I think he's the most fragile pocket rocket in cricket, and I certainly think the West Indies series showed that, and I'm not surprised it did. So certainly that's the hurdle that he's going to have to overcome. And yes, this innings was great, but all it did, and even he will know this as well, all it did was just reinstate what we know he can do. So yeah, great innings, but I really think that the innings that will really make him a better player, which I think is if the other two games have the same conditions as this one, if Sri Lanka bat first set 150 or something and India have to chase it down when the conditions are deteriorating and the bowling is good, I'll be intrigued to see what Ishan Kishan does then. But really well done for this game, and yeah, that's on him. And he got out on 100 when the score's on 155. Now, that second wicket partnership, yes, 44 of 31, but Sri Lanka had an opportunity to really limit the runs. And the first 17 balls yielded 16 runs, and Shreyas Iyer, 11 of 10 he was. And then the way that he really, if you look at his strike rate at the end, 203 it was, 57 of 28 not out. And what I really liked about the things was that there were two, maybe three, but especially two with the sixes that he hit over long on. There were kind of two really power-filled shots, you could say. And the other ones are just placement. 5 fours and 2 sixes in all. And he maintains such a kind of a high strike rate of over 200, 57 of 28. And really is the fact that he walked in with 8.1 overs left, and in the end 57 or 28 from him. I think that it's an outstanding return, and I really enjoyed the fact that it wasn't really power at all from apart from about 2 or 3 shots. He basically just used he kind of just placed the ball really well. So yeah, that was on him. And a great innings from India, 199 for 2 in 20 overs, and once again, as I said, right, of course, no one will be surprised that the Sri Lankan seamers went for runs at the end, because they've been doing that for quite a bit of time. And I think that that's what I was saying. When you see Chamira and Kumara with all the strengths that they offer, when they're not in under that much pressure, when they're trying to set the tone in the first 10 overs, I think that they find it a much easier situation to bowl, and they thrive in those situations. Whereas, I just think that with the bowling attack that they had today, and they've always struggled with this. Even in the T20 World Cup, you had these two seamers, and then you had Hasaranga and Tikshana as the 4 main bowlers that everyone was talking about. And what you'd realize here is that they don't have a fifth bowler to the level of a fifth bowler at all. And the really, you could say Chandrika Karunaratne was a third seamer in this game. And if he's your third seamer, someone who his batting is superseding his bowling at this point in time for me, I think that, or rather, it's like this here. So if you're going to have him in the side, he has to be, it's 2 things. One, he has to improve in either facet of the game to either be picked purely on his batting and purely on his bowling. So if he's going to kind of bowl to this level and improve his batting, he could play at number 6. But if you're playing at number 7, you can't just if you're going to be part of the the 5 bowler attack, especially when the captain himself, Darshan Shanaka, also bats better than he bowls, there's a one frailty in that attack. And even with the 4 bowlers that I've said before, 3 of them are very young in their career, and if you look at the attack, it has their weak points in general, especially in the last 10 overs of the innings. And that's why I'm saying, if he's going to if he's going to be more of a batsman and bat at 6, then it's okay. But then Dasun Shanaka is also there at number 7, and you have to get that third bowler to an acceptable standard out of one of those 2, and especially as a third seamer, which Sri Lanka don't have at the moment. This T20 side does not have at the moment. And I think that they also, their death bowler, they need to find a seam bowler. I really think that they're, yes, after the first 2 overs, you could say that India did find it quite, that they didn't really have too many or any hiccups at all, really. I mean, the most real situation where you could say they, found it not difficult, but the time when they weren't getting as many runs was in the early stages of the second wicket partnership, and with the way they made up, even that didn't prove to be anything really bad either. So I think that even when Sri Lanka set a good tone in the first few overs, which is they did in a few games in the T20 World Cup, then what happens is their death bowling just lets them down. They're going to have to find a death bowler, and I don't know who they're really going to bowl at the death. So they certainly have some things to figure out there. And I can think the spinners could have bowled more overs than the pacers. At least 2 more. If Jay Wickrama had bowled 2 more overs, only giving 15 runs in his first 2 overs, he could have, 8 overs from the spinners, going for considerably less than the seamers did. But yeah, I think it's a shortcoming that Sri Lanka were pretty much always going to have to deal with until they find some players that can fill those roles so accessible. They get all the current ones improving what they do. And then the Sri Lankan batting innings. Now, I'm going to go through this quickly because I think there's what you have to take from this is the significance, because I really think that this really was... I think they were quite disadvantaged by the pitch deteriorating as much as it did, and I really think that it was great captaincy from Rohit Sharma to for that Ekana University end. Like the first delivery of the innings was Patum Nisanka was quite unlucky. The ball kept low, it went onto his toe and then went onto the stumps. He didn't really know where the ball was. And I think that really along that end, the bowling changes in this order were Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Harshal Patel and Venkatesh Iyer. And Venkatesh Iyer came as a bowler quite early. And I think it was a good move because with the way that he bowls, he was a handful on these. I know, yes, you could say if you see how many runs, yes, he went for runs, yes, but I think that he certainly would have offered quite a bit on this surface, and in some cases he did. And yeah, in the end, I think that really this. Looking at the Sri Lankan batting lineup, right? So there's Kamil Mishara and Janit Lianage, and I think they've only played about one game or so in the latest game in Australia, I think. And Russell Arnold on commentary said they're not dashers, they play proper cricketing shots, which there are quite a few players like, so that isn't really a problem. But the first part, they aren't dashers, is the thing where, look, if you look at this top four in this game, yes, you could say the players, some players aren't there in this side, but even the players, and I will get to that in a bit, but Patum Nisanka, Kamil Mishara, Janet Lianage, Chayat Asalanka. If you're chasing 200, which one of those, regardless of the pitch conditions, which one of those are going to give you that momentum that you would really want chasing a 200 score? The most likely of those have been Nisanka and Asalanka, quite inexperienced in their career, and with what we've seen of them so far, they don't really give you that momentum to chase a 200 score. And they have quite a lot of ability, yes, and I haven't really seen much of the other two, and I'm sure that they are good players as well. But I'm saying that if you look at this top four, you wouldn't really say there's anyone that, especially the strike rate of one of the two newer players, it was 112, I think Leah Nagiev was. So certainly, if you combine those top four, you're not really going to get that fast start to chase a 200 score down. And the icing on the cake, unfortunately, I mean, honestly, one of the most underrated, for me, the most underrated test match number 5 that there is right now. I mean, Dinesh Chandimal would make my team probably, I'd probably choose Rahane and Stokes and then Dinesh Chandimal, honestly, because he's been so underrated. I really think that, at number 5, he really doesn't come up in the conversations at all when talking about kind of test match batting lineups, but in kind of making a dream lineup, let's say. But if someone said you'll have Dinesh Chandimal at number 5, I would think that my batting lineup is in very good hands at that position. And yeah, as I said, honestly, the most underrated number 5, test match number 5 in my view right now. But I think that the problem is when you get to the white ball format, his effectiveness decreases with as the game gets shorter. And you look in the ODI format, you're maybe striking at 100, and yet you look at his strike rate, 104, batting at number 5, chasing 200, and you just see with this lineup, for the top 5 in this game, regardless of whatever the pitch conditions were, you weren't going to get that impetus to chase a 200 score. And Dinesh Chandimal at number 5, yes, they had limitations, yes, in the squad for this series, but yet he played the games against Australia as well. So when Kusal Mendes is unavailable for this series, but he can keep as well, I would think that when he's back, he'll be opening the batting at least, or Kusal Perera at least, and they'll be keeping. And I think that's a necessary change because then it gives Bhanuka Rajapaksa, who isn't in the series as well, who's actually withdrawn his international retirement recently. He will probably be, I think, if he's at that number 5 role. And you've got a kind of a good finishing trio there in Rajapaksa, Karunaratne and Dasun Shanaka. And I think if Chamika Karunaratne, if he wants to become a batting all-rounder, and I do think there's more of an X factor in his batting than his bowling, if he really improves his batting, improves both facets of his game, but really becomes a proper batsman who's well adapted to at least the kind of position that he plays in, I think that that's a very good finishing trio there. And I think that I don't know why Gunnar Tilak, he's in the squad, so I don't know why he didn't play this game, because it doesn't really say that he's unavailable or anything. So certainly I would think that if he is available, even if he wasn't available for this game, I'm sure from the next game they should think about bringing him in. Because again, he really is someone that really could give that kind of more of an impetus at the top. He's a good player, and I'm not saying the others aren't, but I've seen Gunnar look at bat, and I really think he's a good player. I'm surprised that they didn't pick him for this game if he would have been available. And I really think that there are some players in this lineup where if you look at Nirshan Dikwella, Kusal Perera, obviously there'd be players that they would really have missed in this kind of situation. And if you combine all of those certainly names, you'd think it's quite a good batting lineup. But Certainly, if you look at Kusal Pereira and Niroshan Dikwela, I just think that even though they do go aggressively, they would want to get the consistency factor, especially of Kusal Pereira. So even if they had those players, I think that it would have required a bit more application for them to really step bat for quite a while in the innings, especially for Kusal Pereira, who ever since that 153 against South Africa in 2019, probably I think the best innings ever played, you could say. It is the fact is the consistency thing has completely just gone out the window, and I think that certainly he's going to have to, if he does get into the side, which I think he could do, especially considering if you look at this top five, so despite the fact you've got some really quality stroke players there, the such strike rates and impetus in a big chase, you're not really going to get too much. So certainly they need some players, those players like Dikwela and Kusal Pereira, to be more consistent, as well as kind of do what they do and provide the impetus at the top of the order. So I think that yeah, they've got amendments which they certainly will make when the full squad is available. But yeah, that was on this team really. I just think that even with their full lineup there, you look at against the really the elite teams like England, India, Australia, where they do struggle to really put up, despite the fact that there are a lot of positives in this team. It's quite a talented group of players, and I really think that this is probably the best white ball kind of, these are the talents that have emerged in Sri Lankan cricket in Nisanka, Asalanka, etc. I actually think that certainly the team is in the best place now than it was kind of a few years back or even 2 years back. So yeah, I think that that's a great positive. But I think that, as I said, they need to get a death bowler. And their bowlers need to be more adaptable. I think even when, look, Tikshana, for example, as I said before, he's quite prone to dropping the ball short and he gets swatted in the leg side. Hasaranga, I think that like he is quite good, but he's, as I said, three of these main four bowlers are very young in their career. And I think that if the batsmen are going after you, and if you're relying on Hasaranga to really be the sole player to kind of just, yes, he takes wickets, but I'm saying that if you're relying on him to really try and control that phase and to really like do what Chahal does for RCB, let's say, and also for India as well, it would be quite a stretch at this point in his career. And so yeah, if he's the one you're relying on to make sure you don't get hit about in the middle overs, or definitely start to get hit about from the middle phase going into the death overs, I really think that it's a bit of a stretch. So even the bowlers that they do have, the main four, have to improve as well in terms of the fact that the the death bowling, they have to, Chamira and Kumara have to take the load of the death bowling, because if they can, right now at least, there's not really that third seamer who can bowl at the death, so they're going to have to take the load whether they like it or not. And yeah, that's pretty much on this team really. Karnaratne, as I said, either has to improve in his batting or bowling in terms of really being that you can be picked on either facet as a genuine batsman or a genuine bowler. Because right now, with Shanaka also in the side, you've got two bowlers who, as I said, you wouldn't really consider them as fifth bowlers. And I really think that's hurting the composition of the bowling attack, especially if you have the four players who have their kind of shortcomings as well, especially the two seamers and the bowling at the death, and Tikshana as of now kind of dropping the ball short. So yeah. And as I say, it's a young team, and there's quite a lot of talent there. But I do think that they were disadvantaged coming to this series because, as I said, playing in Australia, then straight away a small turnover coming here. I felt quite bad for them even in that regard. On top of that, players unavailable. On top of that, the fact is that I really think if they'd batted first in this game, they would have really had quite a better chance. I think if they put 150, which I hope they do, in at least 150 in one of these next two games at least, where they bat first, put on 150, and India have to bat when the pitch conditions are just as difficult as they were in that second innings. So I think that with the bowlers that Sri Lanka had, they would have been, especially Karnaratne bowling the slower stuff, would have been more effective in the second innings. The spinners would have probably bowled their full course. Ajay Kamara would have bowled that extra 2 overs. Shanaka may have been more effective, maybe bowling some more slower stuff. And Kumara and Chamira certainly just holding that line and length, which they do. I think that this would have been quite a hard attack to play, especially the two main bowlers in Shamira and Kumara would have been quite difficult to play in the second innings, but it is what it is. And I think that I really would like to see India bat in the second innings to see how they go. But yeah, that was this game, and on to the next one, which starts tomorrow. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?